suspicious absence of the haul trolley in the background wasn't enough of a hint, I can officially confirm that 2024's book buying year has begun. And oh baby, mama has got a lot to get through, so let's just get rolling. It's Leanne and welcome back to another video. Today's video is the first video of the year in which I am showing you brand new books that have made their way into my house, which is not insignificant because these books are the first books that are going to be counted towards my read 60% of your 2024 purchases square on my bingo board. They're special books, if you will, because arranged neatly here in their little stacks, they are the books that are going to specifically be bringing me stress in 2024. Let's just admit it, no matter how much I might like some of you, you are going to stress me out. And because we know that they're going to stress me out, and because we know that we have this 60% box, my book hauls for 2024 are going to work a little bit differently. Last year I didn't show you every single book that made its way into my library. Some of them were read before they were featured in a haul, some of them just ended up on my shelves, and last year I didn't have my library cart back in my library, so I didn't actually have anywhere to store haul books before I showed you them, which meant that just like unhaul books, they tended to just stack up and up and up and up in piles, which was not great for my mental health. Piles of stuff around the place, just not great for my mental health. But now we do have the library cart in here, covered in plushies and hiding things on the back of it that I don't want you to see in my background, like, you know, my camera when I'm not using it, and string apparently, spare cat toys. And that means that there is actually a dedicated place to put the books. That means that there is actually a place where it doesn't look like the books are just stacked up willy-nilly, and where special editions can be kept safe before they make their way onto my shelves. So this year I am pledging to do two things with this square. First of all, this year I am going to show you every single book that makes its way into my house in 2024. Those will of course primarily be physical books, but in the off chance that I do happen to buy a Kindle book, or in the very likely event that I purchase an audiobook, I will include them in these hauls so that you guys can see them. So you will have a full visual library of everything that's come into my library. And secondly, I am going to be doing a fun vlog project with this 60% square, which you will see the start of very, very soon. I'm excited. I hope you guys are excited. Keep your eyes peeled for that. When it comes to today's haul, there are in fact actually two stacks of books here. There is the stack of books that were all on my haul trolley before 2024. Books I got for Christmas, books that I purchased last year, some special editions that I pre-ordered that came in, and then there is a set of books that I have purchased for myself in 2024. Obviously the first set of books aren't going to be counting for my 60% square, and so I'm going to go through those first, and then we will get to the second set, the ones that I done bought this year with my own money, and we will let the accountability commence. Alright, so first up, partially because I don't want these sloshing about the top of my trolley anymore and potentially getting damaged, and secondly because you guys have spotted them already in my background. That special edition set is of course the Red Rising trilogy from Fairy Loot. Now this is their second print of this trilogy. I think these are the Mortal editions or the Iron editions. I don't know, guys. I really pay zero attention to what Fairy Loot calls their shiny editions these days. There is another set of Fairy Loot Red Rising books which are naked hardbacks, I believe. They are the full series, I think, up until Lightbringer. So I do think that they are planning on bringing out the rest of the series in those editions. I have no idea if they are planning on bringing out the rest of the series in these editions. I hope that they are, because I absolutely love them. They are beautiful. But if they aren't, I'm fine with that, because these are just everything that I wanted for this series. The original covers for this series are just not it as far as I'm concerned. Especially the original covers for the first trilogy, which just look like they marketed to like 19-year-olds who were brought up on Star Wars and now want something harder. But these are the editions of my dreams, so I will briefly show you them. So these editions ones have beautiful foil all the way around. They all have quotes from the individual books on the back. They have sprayed edges, which when they are all lined up make the solar system out of Red Rising, which is just very cool if you ask me. There's maps at the start of these books and this is the map sprayed on the edges, so that makes me happy. They are again foiled front and back under the dust jacket, although you guys know I don't really care about that too much because I don't take the dust jackets of my books off when I read them. However, they match the art that is on the end papers for these editions, and the books are all signed by Pierce Brown, which is just a nice little addition. I absolutely love the artwork in these editions as well, and I also really love who's included in the artwork for these editions. Our sullen boy and our absolute #1 gal. These editions are beautiful. Hats off to Fairlight for them, because if they do bring out the rest of the series in these editions, I will once again recreate the exact same thing that happened with these ones, wherein I will sit sweating with my patrons until the link comes up, and then I will click on it and try and purchase it as fast as is humanly possible. The next two books that I have were both sent to me for Christmas from Sarah Beth. Thank you so very much for sending these along. I have a few books here from my wish list from Christmas, and you guys are just so generous. You do not have to send me stuff, but I so appreciate you taking time out of your day to look through my wish list and pick things for me. And I think there's a good chance that both of these books might be making me feel emotions too, although those emotions may be very different. Because the first of these books is Hooked by Emily McIntyre. This is the first in the Never After series. This is a fantasy romance series, and it is, you guessed it, inspired by Peter Pan. Could there possibly be any more perfect romance adaptation for me? I think not. 2023 was definitely the year of me trying to find my niche in romance, and I definitely haven't found it yet. And interestingly enough, I had a conversation with Kirsty wherein she was like, I think that for you, what you really like is when a book of another genre has a romance subplot. So you like there to be like plot, overarching things going on in the background, and then romance to be naturally introduced throughout, rather than a book that is just romance. And you know what? I think she's probably right. And that's likely the reason that when I have found a romance book that I love, that I rave about it so very much, because it's so surprising for me that I've loved it as much as I did and it stuck out so much from the rest. But I think that there is a potential for both of these books to become those standout books for me, because I love a Peter Pan retelling. I studied Peter Pan a lot in university. There's a lot of really screwed up subtext in Peter Pan, and I think that a dark romance fantasy novel might be the perfect place to put that. So this one is the classic battle between Hook and Pan. Hook has always wanted to destroy Peter Pan and everything that he stands for. But then one day, Peter's 20-odd-year-old daughter, Wendy, walks into Hook's bar. And Hook is like, she has no idea who I am, does she? This is perfect. Seducing her and then possibly getting rid of her in a horrible way would be great payback for Peter. Except that of course this is a romance, so when Hook decides that he's going to seduce Wendy, he gets a little bit more than he bargained for. I absolutely love the first page of this one. It had me gripped. I wanted to sit down and read it as soon as it appeared. And I'm similarly excited about the second one. This is You Again by Kate Goldbeck, and it is kind of an anti-romance. It's about romantic things, but actually everybody has done something really horrible to somebody else, and there's no guarantee of happy ever after. Because this one is about Ari and Josh. Ari is a comedian trying to make it big in New York, and Josh is a born and bred Manhattan local who is trying to break into the culinary scene, and they bump into each other because they're both dating the same girl and have absolutely no idea that this is the case. Neither of them leave this meeting particularly predisposed to like the other after it, and then they bump into each other. And from that, an unlikely friendship is formed. And the bulk of this book really is about their friendship, but then how their friendship is slowly turning into not a friendship. The last line on the back says, until one night the unspoken boundary of their platonic relationship begins to blur. Complicated friends to lovers is apparently one of the things that I love the most in contemporary romance when I have found good things. So I am very, very hopeful that this one ticks all of the boxes. Although if we could quit with the Adam Driver fan art, I would really, really love that. Alright, so next up I have two very different books that were sent to me by the lovely Sarah. Again, thank you so much for sending these along, my love. The first one of those is the start of a fantasy series, and that is The Ninth Reign by Jen Williams. Now, the reason that this one was on my wish list in the first place is because you guys have relentlessly, absolutely relentlessly recommended Jen Williams to me. Now, to be fair, when most of you recommend this author to me, you do recommend their first trilogy, and this is the start of their second trilogy, but as far as I know, this is not actually an extended universe. And when I read the synopsis of both of the series, this was the one that appealed to me more, so this is the one that I put on my wish list. And that is because this one has one of my favourite tropes in fantasy, which is like an unlikely band who are held together mostly by the promise of money and not by the promise of like fun things or loyalty or friendship. So this one is about Tormlin. He lives in a once prosperous city which is now pretty much a dead space in the world. It's dangerous, nobody goes there, and everybody is trying to get out. So when Tormlin is offered employment from a lady explorer, he is like, yes, sign me up, get me out of here, I don't care where you take me to, I am going. And then there's a line on the back that just made me laugh so hard, and it says, even when they are joined by a fugitive witch with a tendency to set things on fire, the prospect of facing down monsters and retrieving artifacts is preferable to the abomination left behind. However, despite the fact that Tormlin and the rest of this little ragtag band are very much not big players in this world, the big players in the world are not willing to let the Empire collapse, and these little players might just be getting in their way. So this one is pretty high up on my I want to consciously start these series list for this year. But let's hope that this one goes the way of Red Rising and I just gobble my way through it really, really quickly, and it doesn't end up being one of those series where I start the first book and I'm like, I loved it, and then never pick it up again. Now, like I said, these books couldn't be more different because the other book that Sarah sent along is Sinister Spring by Agatha Christie. This one is a short story collection of Agatha Christie stories from all over her universes set in spring. So I think we have Marple and Poirot in here, but we also have like Tommy and Tuppence and some standalone stories. There is one of these editions for every season. They are so beautiful, so beautiful. But I put them on my wish list because I was like, the second that I buy the first one, it's going to be an absolute gateway to having to buy the rest of them. I now need the whole series on my shelves or my brain won't be happy. But I am very much making myself the promise that I am not going to buy the next one in this series until I have read the first one, because when it comes to short stories, I am not a very big fan. The thing that this does have going for it, however, is that I do love Agatha Christie's short stories. There are a couple of Poirot and Marple novels in the timeline which are actually just interconnected short stories, and I adore them. One of them is one of my favourite Miss Marples, in fact, so this actually has a lot going for it to get read pretty soon. Next up, speaking of my patrons and also of pretty editions, my lovely, lovely patron Emma, who I absolutely adore. She's been around for a really long time and we have great times chatting, picked me up this stunning edition of Charlotte's Web. This is one of those stories which again has just lived rent-free in my head since I read it as a kid. I still have my original really, really battered paperback copy of this, but when I saw this edition, this is the Puffin Classics edition of this one, just in case you wanted to pick it up for yourself. It has lovely end papers. It's just my note in there from Emma. It has absolutely lovely end papers, and all of the illustrations from the original are intact in here. I cannot wait to read from this edition, and it is definitely getting pride of place on my shelves. Next up is one that came from one of my lovely besties, Sarah. Even though she addressed the note to "you old / lovely witch," screw you too, Sarah, I also love you lots. And Sarah sent along The Sword Defiant by Gareth Hanrahan. Now, this one is another start of a fantasy series. I can see y'all judging me from over there. And it came out in 2023, series, so I don't actually know if the next one has been published or when it is going to be published. This one sounds like it is very along the lines of Kings of the Wild in terms of the fact that the warrior in this, who is the main character, once was a part of a large group of warriors who have now all either, you know, gone to do their own things in their own lives or are dead. The main character in this, Sir Alfric, and his fellow knights were actually the ones to take down the Dark Lord in this world. They took down the Dark Lord, they took down his city, and they buried all of his various one rings to rule them all. Sorry, I mean his various magical things of power, those. They buried them in lots of different places that only the 9 of them knew about. Now, years and years and years later, Alfric, who is himself the keeper of the cursed sword that we see on the cover, discovers that there is a new threat to the world. He seeks out his fellow knights to try and put the band back together, but he discovers in doing so that there is a traitor in the midst because one of the buried artifacts is gone. I am so hoping that this one also has a little bit of Red Rising in there, a little bit of like, we have all this history and I love you so much, but look at all the gasp betrayal, because you guys know that I am a particular fan of that. The only thing that I'm mildly concerned about in this is that this is one of those very classic sort of Dungeons and Dragons fantasy worlds. I am not a big fan of D&D like worlds. This one starts out with him in a tavern and some of the like tavern folk singing the song about an ogre that was killed, and I'm not a huge fan of those kind of like classical monsters from mythology and fantasy. So I'm hoping that it doesn't lean too much into that, because I will say that the banter in this one is already top class in the first 8 pages. And then finally, from the pre-2024 stack, I have a lovely Christmas gift from my lovely friend Lily here on BookTube, and it's one that I'm super excited about. So thank you for sending that through, girl. It made me smile very much on Christmas morning. This is One Dark Window by Rachel Gillig. On the surface, this is not a book that I think that I would have picked up just based on the synopsis and the cover. However, I wanted it based on what some very trusted friends have said about it, who also share a lot of my other reading tastes and who also would not normally have picked this one up and fallen in love with it. Although I'm sure that a few of them are now watching this video and are dying to tell me in the comments that they did in fact hate it. This one is about Elspeth Spindle, and she comes from a world which looks kind of like it's based on Gothic London from what I can gather. And Elspeth quite simply has a monster who lives in her head. He is a magical monster, he keeps her safe, and he also keeps her secret. But magic costs things in this world, and nothing comes without a price, especially not monsters who live in your head. Elspeth has a lot of problems. However, one of them is that on her way out of town she bumps into a mysterious highwayman, and she gets dragged into an adventure that she did not sign up for, because the town that Elspeth is running from, Blunder, has a dark magic which is slowly consuming it, and the highwayman wants Elspeth's help to stop that from happening. Now, the other things that I have heard about this one is that it employs a kind of tarot magic whereby all of the cards do something different, and it sounds both quite complicated and very intriguing, so I am looking forward to that. The writing so far in the first couple of pages that I've read has been very much up my alley, and all of the chapters start with a card like this with some information on it. And so far, although the setting is obviously much further in the past / in a fantasy world, it feels kind of bone seasony to me, and we know that I am here for that. Alright, so that is everything from the pre-2024 stack. However, it is now time for accountability. I'm not entirely sure about this next book or where it should fall, and I want you guys to tell me your opinions about that down in the comments below. Because the first book that I've got here to show you from 2024 is The Atlas Complex by Olivia Blake. This is the latest book in the Atlas 6 series, and it was very kindly sent to me by the lovely people at Book Break. Thank you so much for passing this along. We all know how much I love the Atlas 6 series. Like, Love, 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 love it. But this is a book which has come into my library, which I did not actually pay for myself, but it is a new book for 2024. What I want you guys to tell me down below is whether you think that any new book that comes into my house in 2024 should go towards my read 60% of your 2024 purchases, or if you think that only the books that I've paid for with my own money should go towards this square. Because this square is really there for two totally separate purposes. First, it is there to kind of keep me accountable for the amount of money that I spend versus the amount of books that I'm actually reading. But it is also there to stop new things coming into my house turning into rainy day books or TBR veterans or just getting unhauled unread. And although this particular book is very, very unlikely to become a book that gets unhauled unread, it does have the potential to become a rainy day book. If by next month we think that this should be contributing to my read 60% square, then I will add it to the total for next month retrospectively, and if not, it will just quietly go onto this stack and we shall never speak of it again. Now, I'm going to show you these books in no particular order because I have muddled them up, taking them off my trolley and putting them on my table, but I want you to know that they have gone on my original spreadsheet in the order that I bought them. Mostly for statistical purposes, because I want to look more closely at this 60% off my 2024 purchases at the end of this year. I want to see whether there are books that come in January and don't get read until December, or whether I am actually reading them in a timely fashion. The first one of those books is What Kind of Mother by Clay McLeod Chapman. This is a book that I spotted on a table in Waterstones when I was out with my friend Steph for the day, and when I say that the blurb on the back of this ticked every single one of my boxes, I cannot emphasize it enough. So much so that this is the only one in this stack that I'm going to just read you the blurb of, because I want you to see the hilarity of how many things in this blurb are perfect for me. So it says, after striking out on her own as a teen mother, Maddie Price is forced to return to her hometown of Brandywine, Virginia. Check. With her 17-year-old daughter. With nothing more to her name, she scrapes together a living as a palm reader at the local farmer's market. A check. It's at the market that she reconnects with her high school boyfriend Henry McCabe, now a reclusive local fisherman, check, whose infant son Skylar went missing 5 years ago. A check. Everyone in town is sure Skylar is dead, but when Maddie reads Henry's palm, she's haunted by strange and disturbing visions that suggest otherwise. A check. As she follows the thread from these visions, Maddie discovers a terrifying monster at the centre of the labyrinth, and it's coming for everyone she holds dear. How much more of a me book could this book possibly purport to be? Next one that I've got is one that you guys are going to absolutely laugh yourself sick over. I can feel it right now. Just get it out of your system, just let it go, and then we can talk again like sane people, okay? Next one that I have is Normal People by Sally Rooney. Now, I would like to emphasise the fact that I did not pay full price for this. This is a charity shop find. I think it was like £3, but it's in perfect condition. So the person who had this before me also did not read this. So I know for an absolute fact that I am probably not going to enjoy this book. This is Irish literary fiction, which is just never a combination of words that I have ever enjoyed in any way. And it is essentially about two teenagers who grow up in a small Irish town and kind of keep getting bounced into each other's orbit and end up getting entwined in a very complicated relationship. She's also known for kind of like weird and unlikable characters, and this one is an absolutely hugely polarizing book. I've never read any Sally Rooney, but almost everyone else around me has an opinion on her books. And for some reason, I just can't seem to escape this one. It keeps bubbling to the top of my brain. Anytime I see Sally Rooney in bookshops, I'm like, do you know what? I want to know what the hype is about. And I feel like, at least in my head, I've entered into justifying territory here, but go with it. I feel like this one's a little bit different from the hype that I usually give into, because the hype that I usually give into is like pre-order hype, is everybody's excited about a new book coming out. It sounds like exactly the thing that I would like. Cover's devastating, the blurb is amazing, and then it'll become a rainy day book and land on my shelf. I feel like this is different from that kind of hype, because this has been around for a while now, and it still consistently ends up being a thing in my brain that I'm like, I want to try that and see what I think. When I saw a pristine copy of it in a charity shop for £3, I was like, I'll have that. And because we have the read 60% Square, there's a good chance that I will actually force myself to pick it up instead of it just slotting onto my literary fiction shelves and never being seen again. Now, because I am cataloguing in my book hauls now all of the books that come into my house, I am honour bound to tell you about Monsters by Claire Dederer. This is a non-fiction book of essentially criticism, all about the idea of trying to separate the art from the artist, if we should do that, why we do that, and looking at that idea now in modern culture with the amount of information that we have about authors and artists readily available, because there are also, you know, singers and actors and producers and stuff like that in this book. However, I am also honour bound to tell you that while I did pick this up this year, I did buy it, I absolutely hated it. I have a lot of thoughts about it. One of those thoughts is primarily I don't really understand why you guys like it, and I'll be talking about it more in my tops and bottoms video. Similarly, another one that I have actually to hand that I have also bought and DNF'd in 2024 is Erotic Vagrancy by Roger Lewis. I'm absolutely gutted about this one. This one is about Richard Burton and Elizabeth Taylor, and it is about their relationship, how they got together, what happened to them when they were together, and it should have been about that on the surface, but it's very much not. Again, this is another one that I am going to very much talk about in my tops and bottoms for January. Next up is one that I bought in January and is on my February TBR, so it already has a bookmark in it. Go me, because if nothing else, this does mean that I have in fact read 3 of the books from my Read 60% Square already, which was absolutely not the case when I started my bingo board from hell in 2023. I started it in March. I already had a pile of books. I had not picked up a single one out of that pile of books, so I already feel like I am off to a good start. This book is Accountable by Dashka Slater. As you can see on the front, it says the true story of a racist social media account and the teenagers whose lives it changed. I have previously read The 57 Bus by Dashka Slater and I absolutely adored it. It was the first ever YA true crime that I had ever read. This one is about a non-binary teenager who is travelling home on a bus and has their tutu set on fire by a group of kids who are also on the bus who are from the other side of town, and the events in the book absolutely ripped the town apart, and the way that Dashka Slater brought all of these threads together and humanised everybody who was involved in the story was absolutely amazing. And so I was so excited when I discovered that she had brought out Accountable. As I said, I've already started it and it is literally amazing. So this one is about this group of teenagers here who, as you can see, have all different intersections of friendships between them. This one is primarily about a student, and they have been running a sort of underground, close friends only Instagram account for quite a while by this point, which posts racist, homophobic and other kind of slur-laced memes. But they're not just racist memes, they are racist memes featuring people from this school. And one day 2 girls from this teenager's class are scrolling through their friends' phone and one of these posts comes up and the girls are like, what the hell is this? And this is very much the story of then what happens to these teenagers, the teenagers who were involved, the ones who knew about it, the ones who are featured on the account, what happens to their parents and their educators in the small town that they live in. So at least this one has been a win. Now the next book that I have to show you is possibly the most beautiful book that I currently own. This is The Invocations by Crystal Sutherland, and it is the latest in the Evernight quarterly horror subscription from Illumicrate. And I have to say, guys, all of the customizations on the books have been immaculate. It's a little bit hard to see here, but there is a corpse on the sprayed edges. These are the end papers, and this is the under the dust jacket. I'm obsessed. Now, I will say that I have read one other book by Crystal Sutherland in the past. It was House of Hollow. I loved the setup for it. I loved the writing. The writing was so good, but I ultimately felt like the book kind of went nowhere and it focused on things that I wasn't really interested in. And also, for such a tiny book, it had a lot of pacing problems in my not so humble opinion. And I think at the time I said I would probably consider trying another book from Crystal Sutherland in the future because I loved the writing, and sure enough, here this one is. Now I am finding it very, very hard to tell whether or not this one is YA, and I can't remember whether the Evernight subscription said that they would or they wouldn't include YA. So far they haven't, they've all been adult, so I will need to look that up and find out a conclusion to it one way or another. However, this book is about these three different women. The first of them is Jude Wolfe. Her soul is tied to a demon in a bargain that she absolutely wants out of, but the only way to get out of this bargain is to find herself a curse writer, and she thinks that a series of tragic murders of young women is where she will find her curse writer by following this trail. Zara Jones, however, has also been tracking these murders because the very first one of the victims was her older sister, and she doesn't feel like anybody's doing anything about these in a timely manner, so she's going to do it herself. The two women find themselves together at a crime scene where one of the women were killed, and they are trying to look for clues, and they both discover a business card. On the business card it says Emma Byrne, curse writer, and I'm gonna lay my bets and say this one is Emma, just from everybody's outfits. That's going to be my bet. Have I read either of the other two Evernight books so far? No. I perhaps need to make it into a vlog where I do that. Maybe. But either way, I do not want this one to languish for too long on my TBR. I want to read it because otherwise we're just getting back into bad buying habits. And then finally, the last book that I have here to show you is one that is so new that it doesn't even have its buy one get one half price sticker off of the front from Waterstones. Let's just do that because I really, really hate stickers. And I'm not gonna lie, anytime anybody holds up a stickered book in a book haul like this, my whole body goes like ugh. So this is an Ascension by Martin McInnes. I picked this up on a book shopping trip with my lovely friend Jill, who pointed at it on the table and was like, that there is a book that is following me around. Have you heard of it? And when I looked at the cover I was like, not really, but then I read the blurb and I'm like, oh yeah, it's also one that has been following me around. And so together we decided that we would buy it and buddy read it and just get it off of our consciousness. This one is about Lee. She grew up in Rotterdam and she had a very, very tumultuous early life that she would like to leave as far in the past as is physically possible, please and thank you. What has got her out of Rotterdam is her talent for marine biology, which is a field that she went into and has excelled in, and it has taken her all the way around the world. One day she gets a call about a strange trench that has been found in the Atlantic. Lee jumps at the chance to join this team because at the bottom of this trench may be the earliest examples that could ever be found of life on Earth. But instead what Lee finds at the bottom of that trench is not really any answers about early life on Earth, but maybe life on another Earth. She discovers that the thing at the bottom of this trench is linked to a pattern, and that pattern is already being investigated by an agency, and that each pieces of this puzzle link together to provide a much bigger and more spectacular picture than Lee could ever have imagined. But if Lee decides that she is going to join this agency, it means that she has to leave everything behind forever, not just like out of her town, but like she will never see her town again. Now this one is a little bit out of my wheelhouse in that it is literary fiction and it is quite surrealist literary fiction. However, it does sound like it is right up my alley in terms of the extremely weird conspiracy theories in it, and so I am keeping an open mind. And also the fact that I'm going to be buddy reading it means that at some point in the very near future Jill's going to be like, when are we reading that book? So that will keep me accountable. So by my count that makes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 books that came into my house prior to 2023 that do not count. One book that we have a question mark over that I'm waiting for you guys to tell me what you think about. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 books plus one that's over there soon to leave my house. So my plan is that next time we do a book haul like this, next time I have accumulated enough books on my little haul cart to tell you about, we will do an update on these graphics. And so hopefully between these haul videos and the project for my 60% square that I was teasing you about earlier, we will have a nice idea throughout every month of how close I am to being able to complete 60% off my reading. If you have got this far through the video, then please leave below whatever emoji says spring to you, because it's finally starting to get spring-like here in Scotland. I'm starting to see little green things appear on bushes and hedges and trees. Again, as always, if you have read any of the books that I have mentioned here today, then please let me know down in the comments below whether you think that I'm going to love them or whether you think that I'm going to hate them, and what you thought about them. And as always, because it is a new book buying year, if you think of any books that you think that I would absolutely adore, either just off the top of your head or based on these books here today, then please leave those down below in the comments too, and maybe those will end up in one of my future haul videos. If you're new here and you want to see how I get on with this stack, then hit that subscribe button, and if you are a returning viewer and you are enjoying the chaos of watching me try desperately to keep track of these numbers, then please hit that like button down below, because it really does help my channel, and I will speak to you guys really soon. Bye!